In the world, there's been this huge shift. The Me Too movement is part of it. Our industry, the cultural industry, the theater industry, has responded with things like Not in Our Space and campaigns. They've created, the code of conduct policy that a lot of technical people have posted and live by. And I just wondered if I could have Annie, John, and AJ speak to what has changed for you in the rehearsal hall, backstage. Is there something that has changed, Annie, out of that?
Yes. More women are speaking up and more stage managers are being much more uber aware. I mean, we were always aware for years, but we're now more uber aware of the temperature in the room, with one statement, how that can quickly change, with one comment, one look, one physical thing that can change rapidly. And also I have lots of people whispering in my ear, did you see so-and-so do such and such, or say so-and-so did. I now have to intervene. I am the mediator, and I have to bring it to the actor's attention. That behavior, what you did the other day was not good, and you really hurt that person. Now let's take the next step. Are you going to apologize? Or so it has put more pressure on the stage manager to be the mediator. And if things would really get ugly, then you have to go to human resources, or you have to go to the management of the theater. But I have not had to go there. It's all conversations, a lot more private conversations, a lot more talk, a lot more openness.
John, have you seen a shift?
Oh, absolutely. Huge shift in the business. I had the benefit of a very particular experience, which was I stage managed the show Miss Saigon in the 90s. And the Miss Saigon, what was interesting about that was the culture was different because we had a lot of Asians in the cast whose sensibility was different. And they were playing, it was all about Vietnam, the American soldiers being in Vietnam, and these Asians at times had to play prostitutes. And it gave rise to a couple of incidents in the run of the show. And it made me so hyper aware of, in this case, minority women's perceptions of how they were perceived. And it changed the whole way I thought of women generally in a man's environment, because at that time the crews were dominated by men, still are in the commercial theater, to be honest. To me, one of the interesting things that's happening is the introduction of intimacy coaching, which startled me when I first heard about it, but makes total sense. It never occurred to me, and then it suddenly go, oh, of course, there's a real value in that and a real purpose of that.
And for people who will be listening, can you just say why it makes perfect sense to you?
It makes perfect sense because of what Annie was just talking about, which is mediating expectations and understandings. In the theater is so time sensitive that we can rush certain things. We can have automatic expectations about certain things. And a play has an intimate moment of some kind in it, and we just push through it. Just think, well, it's in the script, we say the line, we do the kiss, whatever. And wait a sec, let's just slow down here and be sure we have a common understanding of how we're going to do this and what it means.
I have not had an intimacy coach in rehearsal, but on the last process I was working on, some of the core concepts of an intimacy coach came into the room, and it's more just about bringing consent into the room. What you were talking about in theater, we tend to like rush, oh, there's a kiss, we'll do the kiss, and there's an implied consent that, oh, your job is to kiss this person now, so you kiss this person now, but hasn't actually been that conversation about, oh, like, are we kissing today or are we not kissing today? Or what happens sometimes when people are sick, they'll be like, oh, no kissing today. But what we did is there is an exercise of the actors just clapped to each other, and that was me clapping is me giving my consent that we will do the intimate moment today. And if you don't receive the clap back, and it was just something they did over in the corner before going on stage or at the top of the day, just between the two actors, but it was the act of giving consent in the rehearsal hall, which I was like, oh, what an easy solution and lovely concept that we're bringing consent into rehearsal hall instead of these actors who are very vulnerable and putting themselves in vulnerable, intimate situations with potential strangers and just expected to go to those places and kind of have their consent taken away because it's their job. And so just bringing that act back into the room. And then I know as a stage manager, I've often, like, if there's been a weird moment, just making an active decision to actually go check in with whatever artist is in the room that kind of had the weird moment. I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to not in our space or like bullying or harassment in the workplace, are like, oh, you have to stand up, be the voice, like say that's not okay. But it doesn't have to be that aggressive in order to be an active ally in the situations. It can just be in a quiet moment going over and saying, are you okay? Was that comfortable for you? Do you need any help? Do you want me to have a voice in the room? Because sometimes speaking up in a moment may actually make the person feel more uncomfortable and be like, okay, now we're causing a scene. And it's such a tricky, tricky business. Especially because we're all independent artists and you don't really know how much you want to say or not say. So just going and having a private check-in with someone actually does a lot, and also lets them know, like, there is an ally in the room, there is someone who's watching, who sees this, and you have the opportunity to be able to share your voice. And if you do need to pursue it farther, like, there are people there who are bearing witness to it.
Timing is everything, right? You don't want to create a huge scene in this hall that is with a lot of people. I find shaking my head going, that's not good, is usually a good signal to that, no, I don't like what you just did and we'll talk later. Yeah. I think that helps me, just the signal of no, it's not good. And then have the conversation later, as opposed to jumping up going, time out.
Yeah, this is inappropriate work.
Inappropriate.
Yeah.
We have a long way to go, folks. I mean,
yeah.
Frankly, we've taken baby steps. When we started John, it was difficult. It was a very difficult, old school smack a stage manager.
But you see, to me, absolutely right. And so in that sense, the stage manager mediating has been true from the time I began. What's better now is that I think there's heightened awareness with everybody, and the intimacy coaching helps deal with these, building a common understanding from the start. So my experience is that my mediation on these topics, particularly personal contact, is less now than it used to be for me, because everybody is so aware, more aware. I mean, but we have a long way to go, no question.
Yeah. Don't give up. You have to want that job, or you have to want to be a stage manager. and don't feel disappointed that you can't be or not. It is such a it's a difficult job to do. I get fulfillment from it because I'm an adrenaline junkie, flat out. I love the thrill of opening night. I love watching the baby start as an idea on a page and go to opening and then watch it when it goes off at the end, when we close it. I love that. But if this is really what you think your career is, don't give up, go for it. And also open your brain to not just staying in Toronto. I haven't lived in Toronto since 1989. I've come and done shows here, but I haven't been here for a very long time. And I know it's difficult for stage managers in Toronto. So my encouragement always to an apprentice or an assistant who is desperate, who wants to base himself out of Toronto, is look elsewhere. Look across the country. Go to Wawa. Go to Whitehorse. Go to Nova Scotia. Been to Wawa? Go to Halifax. Go to Newfoundland. Go experience other places, and don't give up, because that passion, if you have a drive for theater and are excited about what you're doing, you will make it.
Just a quick,
Yes.
I've learned especially, or at least in the realms of when you're an apprentice, take advantage of the fact that you are in a learning position and you're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed to ask questions because you don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. Just because you went to school for however many years to learn it and you've graduated now, it doesn't mean you know why someone's doing something. Especially I learned a lot when I was doing dance. I had to ask so many times why we have to kind of do that, because I'm used to mainly musical theater. So just taking advantage of, you're allowed to be wrong and you're allowed to ask questions, because when you get to the point where you're not at that moment, you should know it all. So take advantage of kind of the time you have to still be a student.
My philosophy is say yes. When projects come up, when we think of ourselves with certain skills and interests in certain directions, and we think of ourselves in a certain way, and yet offers will come in, opportunities will arise from outside that cone of self-conception. And I say yes, because I have done acrobatic circus with Chinese performers. I have done games, opening ceremonies for sporting events in like Arabia. You end up doing strange, interesting things if you break outside the box and say yes to opportunities that present themselves. Don't limit yourself. Don't categorize yourself as Anna says, by geography or by discipline. And the other thing I would say is remember why you're interested in this business. Don't forget what it is. To me, and I think I talked about when we began, it was about the rehearsal hall and the work, but 40 years later, it's about the audiences. I'm fascinated by what audiences connect with. And all the work we do in the rehearsals and the tech is to provide the audiences with an experience. And audiences are endlessly fascinating. And to me, that's why the theater, in this age of the digital age, this revolution we are in, the theater is as vibrant as ever, because there is nothing to replace human beings in a room performing for human beings. But that has so many facets and forms. Say yes.